Deadlifting with the barbells, very exciting. Okay, so this is my favorite exercise. It's a lot of people's favorite exercises. This is a full body movement, but we refer to it as a posterior chain movement. So posterior, everything on the back side of the body is working to complete this movement. With the traditional barbell deadlift, you really want to be using Olympic plates. Olympic plates are all the same height. They just get wider as they get heavier, whereas some gyms will have different sized plates depending on the weight. So if it's a lightweight, it'll be smaller, and then as it gets bigger, the plate gets larger. We don't want to be using them for traditional barbell deadlift. This is an Olympic plate. You can see some of these behind me here. This is getting thicker. That one is thicker again, but they are all the same height. So every time I go to deadlift, I am picking the barbell up from the same point on my body from the floor, okay? So I'm not, as I'm getting stronger, the range of motion is getting shorter, okay? So it's just really important that we use Olympic plates for this. The movement is really a full body movement, and if you are doing this with a barbell, you will have done this with a kettlebell previously. You will have also done it with 2 kettlebells previously. We are now on the barbell movement, so we want to make sure that our setup is correct. The setup is a really, really big part of completing this movement the most efficient way. So I want to set myself up, obviously in the middle of the barbell. I'm going to take a hip width stance, so not as wide as a squat stance, and with the squat we will externally rotate. With our deadlift, we are going to keep our feet relatively straight, pointing straight ahead in front of us, our toes. We also want that barbell to be through the middle of my foot. Okay, so right now you can see I'm not touching the barbell. I'm actually behind it a little bit, but the barbell is through the middle of my foot. So right over basically where I were to tie my shoelaces. If I walk right up to the barbell and my shins are already touching, I'm going to essentially be doing a RDL from the floor. That will be because I am going to have to get my hips back heaps to get into the position to not bend my knees at all. Okay, so with the traditional deadlift, I want there to be that slight bit of space between you and the barbell before you go to pick it up. Because when we go to pick up the barbell, I'm gonna get you to bend your legs forward just enough so that your shins touch the bar, and that's how we know how much knee bend. Because as long as that barbell is through the middle of my foot, I know that I'm going to pick it straight up and down, okay? If I do not have the right setup, my body will find that position eventually, but we want to be the most efficient possible, so we want that perfect setup from the start, and this is the difference between being able to lift a heavy weight or not, okay? So barbell is through the middle of my foot. I want to be thinking about reaching my arms down, okay? I want my arms to be as long as they possibly can. In doing that, you can see that I've gone from a fairly loose position into a tighter position as I'm reaching my hands down. This distance between my shoulder and my ears is now bigger, okay? The crown of my head is going to be pulled towards the ceiling, and I want to think about elongating my spine. Because in this exercise, when I go to pick this weight up, if I am not super tight through my core and my back, and I'm not my longest version of myself, when I go to pick it up, I might round to get there, okay? So what I want to be thinking about doing is reaching my arms. I'm going to reach down, so straight down. I don't want my hands out to the side, and this is why the hip distance is really important, because if my feet are outside of hip distance, then my hands need to be even further out, and I want them to be straight down, okay, for efficiency. I always use a mixed grip, but when you're learning, you can just use your normal hands over the bar grip, but for me, I'm going to use a mixed grip. That just means that as the weight gets heavier, I'm less likely to drop it because I've got one hand in a supinated grip and one hand in a pronated grip, okay? So bar is over the middle of my foot. I'm going to reach my arms straight down, and then I'm gonna bend my knees just enough for them to touch the barbell. Okay, so I'm not pushing the barbell away from me. The barbell doesn't move at all. I am bending my knees so my shins are just touching. And then I'm gonna go from here to weight in my heels. I'm also thinking about being my longest self possible. And even though I've got my hands gripping the bar, I'm not actually pulling on the bar, okay? I want my longest arms possible so that I can direct all of the weight I'm about to move into my feet, and I'm gonna be thinking about leg pressing the ground away from me rather than trying to pick the bar up with my arms, okay? And this is a key part of the deadlift. It might take a little bit of time for you to wrap your head around this concept, but every single time you go to deadlift, I want you to think about actually leg pressing the barbell away from you, leg pressing the floor away from you and pushing that ground with your feet rather than pulling on the bar with your arms, okay? So in real time, reaching down, my knees come forward. I'm going to push that weight away. Same on the way back down. That is your deadlift, okay? If we were going to be doing an RDL, you may have seen a video of me doing this previously. The idea is that with an RDL, you're actually pushing your hips back as much as you can, and your shins are staying vertical. With the traditional deadlift, you are getting some knee bend, you are using your hips, but it's always coming from using that full leg drive to stand up. That is your deadlift tutorial.